There are no moral victories in the NFL, but what the Chicago Bears showed in the loss to the Minnesota Vikings was really important for the long-term future of this team.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today and hopefully every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bears is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players and whether they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, and you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. On the show today, we look at what really matters from this Bears loss to the Minnesota Vikings and why the result, W versus L, is not the most important thing for the Chicago Bears this season. And we look at what is more important, Justin Fields' development, the growth of this coaching staff as well. And we'll also look at some of the things that went wrong in this game and what we want to see this team build from and improve on here moving forward into future games so they can string together better all-around performances that lead this team more to where we want to see them in that long term. But more importantly than what the exact final score was and the result, of course, a Minnesota Vikings victory, a disappointing end to that game where you had that hope of like, holy crap, not only did the Bears retake the lead, but even when they lost the lead again, Justin Fields had the ball with 2 minutes left to drive down and try and have that game-winning drive. And of course, Amir Smith-Marsette, name it's hard to say, and I don't even want to say it at this point, has it ripped away. And between that and the illegal block in the back penalty he had on Justin Fields' touchdown run, sure, we'd like to see him sitting on the bench in the near future, and we'd like to see a lot more Velus Jones Jr. and hopefully soon N'Keal Harry on offense in his place. And same thing with a couple of drop passes from Dante Pettis. Yeah, ideally, neither of those guys are getting significant offensive snaps moving forward. But in spite of all of that, Justin Fields played not only his best game of the season, but I need to go back and watch the All-22 still, but maybe the best game of his Bears career so far. I mean, that second half was exactly what we've been looking for from him. And there were still flashes of it in the first half as well, but he really got into that rhythm. His second half stats, 12 of 13 for 135 yards and a touchdown. And you know, in a vacuum, that is a high completion percentage, but 135 yards and a touchdown is not like, wow, superstar quarterback arrives on the scene. No, but it was growth from Justin in some areas that we've been watching closely this season and that we've been waiting for some progress, and this was really concrete evidence of that. Again, the All-22 will sort of confirm this or maybe deny it, but I'm waiting for the All-22 to really lock it in. But it felt to me like the best pocket presence we've seen from Justin Fields up to this point. And that's been such a major weakness of his that we've seen play a role this season where too often in games he would leave a pocket that's actually clean, but he just feels like there might be pressure coming and he'll bail out of it. Or sometimes, you know, he'll stay in too long and take a sack that he doesn't need to, right? He was trying to find that sweet spot between holding onto the ball too long and leaving the pocket too soon and trusting the pocket too much when the offensive line play wasn't very good. And in this game, there were 3 to 4 to 5 different examples I can think of off the top of my head without going back through the film of him having a little pressure in the pocket, not a total pocket collapse, but you know, one guy gets beat or one side of the line of the pocket is collapsing a little bit and he stays in the pocket, steps up or steps around, and then is still able to deliver a throw. And that element has been missing or has not been frequent enough in his game. It's like as soon as there's pressure, it's full scramble mode out of the pocket and either take off past the line of scrimmage or try and find something downfield. But his ability to stick with the pocket, stick with the plays, and let the routes keep developing just a little bit more created more of those open opportunities in the passing game. And then you combine that with his playmaking of when the pocket really did collapse or there was a blitz that wasn't picked up and he really did need to escape. You saw him do Justin Fields things, pick up first downs, or in the case of the play that was called back, run for a 52-yard touchdown that I don't think very many other quarterbacks in the NFL can actually do. And I was tweeting about this, and initially the first came to mind was like, it's Lamar Jackson and only Justin Fields are the two quarterbacks that can make that type of dynamic touchdown run of 52 yards. I will add Kyler Murray to that list. I had sort of overlooked him. Make the short jokes if you want in there of physically overlooking Kyler Murray, but I'd overlooked Kyler Murray in that discussion. I would for sure say that's a touchdown run that Murray and Jackson can both make. I'm not sure if Jalen Hurts, probably Jalen Hurts, but I haven't watched as much Jalen Hurts as those other two quarterbacks, so I can't definitively say, yeah, he could for sure do that, but I don't think any other quarterbacks hit that benchmark of speed, fluidity, athleticism, acceleration to change direction and not slow down and just sort of weave between defenders for 52 yards. I mean, it was a spectacular play to go with some spectacular throws that he had in this game. And it all felt like really clear progress in an aspect of his game in the pocket presence that isn't as dependent on new scheme, new receivers, right? Regardless of your receivers or what the offense is, like pocket presence is more or less pocket presence, right? There's different protections and different calls and different linemen to get used to sometimes, but it's one of the more translatable things that, like, regardless of who your teammates are or what offense you're in, feeling the pocket is still generally mostly the same in any situation and something we've needed to see progress in, and this looked like real progress. Now, to be fair, the Vikings were not blitzing him very much compared to the Giants last week that blitzed him quite a bit. And the offensive line did a better job in pass protection this week, certainly than last week, and better job than we've seen for most of the season. So it was a better situation for Fields to have better pocket presence in. It was less messy of decisions to have to make in the pocket, but it was still, I see very clear progress, and I'm curious to see then if he can continue this or if this was purely just a case of him being able to do it against the Vikings, but can he do it against other defenses that might attack him in slightly different ways? That's certainly what we'll be watching for here moving forward. We'll also be looking for this Bears defense to maybe figure things out in the first half and not have to always constantly make really good halftime adjustments, but maybe do it more for 4 quarters instead of just the last 2 quarters in particular. We'll look at some of what went wrong with this Bears defense and then where things started to go right and piece together as much as we can next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made super, super easy because it's not like the other daily fantasy you might be used to. In PrizePicks, you're in control because you're not competing against other people. It's you versus the projections available. You pick 2 to 5 players and whether they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. And if you nail it right, you win up to 10 times your money back on any entry. That includes Bears games and Bears players, Justin Fields' yards, his projections, Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery, etc. But all of your sports, NBA, MLB, NHL, golf, hockey, soccer, tennis, college sports, you name it. It's super easy to make entries in literally less than a minute, and you can safely and quickly withdraw your money when you win. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Just don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for that instant deposit match up to $100. We've seen this trend now in Bears games this season. We know the identity of this team is one that may struggle in some first halves, struggle really mightily, like in a game like this when they get down 21-3 and it's like, oh, feels like game over, right? Like they're not stopping Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins has completed literally 17 straight passes to start the game. This one's over. And yet the Vikings don't score again until late in the fourth quarter. The Bears completely take over in that second half and retake the lead. And it's like, okay, now we've kind of done this formula a few times, right? Where first half is some really rough football, and the Boo Birds come out when they're at home, right? And it's a whole thing. And somehow in the second half, they lock in defensively. The offense starts to get going more, and they're right in it in these fourth quarters. And you got to give the coaching staff credit for the way that they're able to turn things around and say, wow, like they figured stuff out and they turned it on in the second half. And that's impressive and that's valuable, and it's kept them in every single game this season and has helped them win 2 games out of their first 5. But I can't help but leave a game like this thinking, like, why does it always take until halftime to figure things out? Like, why does it have to be this difficult for the first 2 quarters? Like, the Bears defense did not make its first stop until there were 2 minutes left in the half. Like, that was when the Vikings had their first punt, I believe. It was that last drive for theirs, or I guess the second to last drive there in the first half. And it's not like the Vikings came out and seemed to be doing anything different or unexpected. Like, heading into this game, we knew the Vikings would want to get the ball to Kirk Cousins and run the ball with Dalvin Cook. And he threw it to Kirk Cousins 7 times in the first half. And it was like, yeah, this is exactly what we were expecting. Like, they were harassing Jalen Jones early, targeted him a bunch on those drives, first and second quarter, just over and over again. Wherever Jalen Jones was on the field, that looked to be where the ball was going. And from a coverage standpoint, it didn't feel like the Bears were mixing it up all that much. You know, we couldn't see the full safety spread without the all-22. But looking at where the cornerbacks were lined up on the line of scrimmage, usually it was fairly predictable pre-snap what coverage the Bears were going to be in, and Kirk Cousins really kind of tore it apart. And you weren't getting much pass rush in there either. And it was like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Why, like, where's the preparation? Where's the proactive game plan? It feels to me like they come into these games and say, we're going to run our base stuff, and we're going to see what they do to respond to that, and then we're going to respond to what they do. And the Bears' response has been very effective, but why not? Like, why haven't they been able to be more proactive and come out at the very beginning doing some of the things they end up doing in the second half? Because, again, it's not like these teams are doing something that you wouldn't have expected or perhaps planned for entering the game. They're not coming out with a brand new offense, throwing some brand new wrinkles that you've just never seen before. They're throwing, underneath passes to Justin Jefferson or taking him vertical when he has one-on-one coverage. Like, this is pretty straightforward kind of stuff from the Vikings. But things change in that second half. And I'll be curious to see the all-22 to see coverage-wise if the Bears, or how much more the Bears did to mix things up. But I noticed a few things that we could see on the broadcast footage. One, in terms of the running game, and to some extent the passing game, they got more creative with their defensive line and linebackers. A lot more of those stunts and twists where guys are exchanging gaps. And it helped some of the defensive linemen get in the backfield more quickly on those running plays, and it helped them get more pressure on Kirk Cousins. The only sack was in the first half right at the end there, but there were more of those plays where there's pressure that forces him to throw inaccurate passes and led to more of those incompletions in the second half. And that felt like a progress and adjustment, and something we talked about on Friday's game plan podcast, which is why I come back to, like, this was not something you couldn't have predicted. Like we said, maybe blitz Kirk Cousins because your cornerbacks are not going to be able to hold up over an extended period of time in coverage, so you need to hurry up the passes and make them throw it quickly, and then let your corners play more aggressive up. And it didn't feel like the Bears started doing more of that until we got into that second half. Then you also get Kindle Vildor really taking that next step this season and playing a lot better this year than we saw last season. That interception was so smart. Like, it was clearly, like, learned that the Vikings had run rollouts at him over and over again, and we saw it against the Giants, those rollouts. And he, after 7 quarters of that happening to him, he finally on that play, like, turned his back to the sideline and looked toward the middle of the field and said, okay, they're rolling out towards me. There's going to be a route coming at me. Let me just find that route and cut it off. And he got in front of the pass, and Cousins never saw him come over. And, like, that was really smart, like, savvy kind of veteran cornerback move from Kindle Vildor, who's not a veteran by any description. So I really like the progress we saw there. I'm curious to find out, did the Vikings take their foot off the gas a little bit? Was that part of this process? Because, Justin Jefferson had 2 catches in the second half after having, 7 for 130 some odd yards in the first half. Like, it was a completely different look for that Vikings offense. And I don't know, was that the Bears taking things away from him? Was that the pressure in Kirk Cousins' face limiting what they could do with that? I need to kind of figure out what exactly happened there. Because even when the Vikings offense got going again on that last drive in the fourth quarter, 17 plays, 75 yards, 7 minutes off the clock, they still had to really work their way down there. And it wasn't nearly as easy as it had been in that first half. But to the Bears' credit, right, they were still in it after that drive. They made the Vikings really earn it down there. And even then, like, Justin Jefferson was like extending towards the goal line on the 2-point conversion and stuff. Like, it was not an easy drive for them to get down there, and kept the Bears right in it to give Justin Fields a chance to kind of come back. And of course, Ihmir Smith-Marsette gives the ball away, but the formula was there for the Bears to be close in the end. And so it's all about kind of getting that defense to figure it out more quickly, in the first half, but it's progress from Kindle Vildor. Kyler Gordon seemed to be a little bit better. Wasn't the one that the offense was going after over and over again. It seemed to hold up a little more. Made a couple of really nice tackles in space there. And then in the second half, we saw the pass rush doing a little bit more as well. So there's some stuff to build on there, but you're more confused as to how it got so bad in that first half, like record-settingly bad, 17 completions in a row. And then all of a sudden how they turned that around. That's something we're going to dive into on tomorrow's podcast when we get a chance to go through this all 22. But overall, I thought there was also real progress from this Bears coaching staff. Not that it was like a perfect game, but after last week, how it felt like the blame was so much on their shoulders for how conservative a lot of the decision making was. We saw, especially in that second half, Matt Eberflus was more aggressive and more keen on pushing the envelope a little bit here. And I want to go through some of those decisions and how the wider context of the game applies to those, and whether or not this was a game-specific thing to the Vikings, or whether it was true progress and learning and growth from Eberflus that we'll see applied more to future games next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears and all episodes of Locked On Bears are powered by our friends at Built Bar, the makers of the world's best tasting protein bars. I love Built Bars. I literally eat one every single day. I have 2 boxes in my cupboard right now. I've got some cookies and cream. I've got some raspberry, and I also have some pina colada Built Puffs left in there as well. Because Built Bars taste like candy bars, but they've got all the nutrients of a protein bar. They're low sugar, low calories, high fiber, and high protein. It's that sweet, delicious treat that doesn't leave you feeling with that crazy sugar rush and feeling like crap afterwards, like those empty calories. Built Bars really help me feel full, especially if I'm in a pinch and just need a snack. You got to try them for yourself because they really are delicious and good for you. It sounds too good to be true, but tasting is believing. Head on over to Built.com and enter in our promo code LOCKEDON15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com. Last week after the Giants game, I put a lot of the blame on the coaching staff, running the ball in third down situations when they should have been more aggressive, punting the ball in some fourth downs they should have gone for it, and settling for field goals in the red zone when there were opportunities to get touchdowns on the board. And I wondered if we'd continue to see this trend of like overly conservative Matt Eberflus punting and playing defense. And maybe then it was a result of his inability to play defense in this game in the first half that forced his hand to be more aggressive down the stretch, but it worked, and I want to see more of it. Because you remember at the start of the game, we were wondering, like, oh no, like, is this going to be one of these sloppy kind of coaching games? Very first play, the Bears get the delay of game because Kari Blasingame is running onto the field with 5 seconds on the play clock because they only had 4 receivers, 4 skill players out there, and an empty package for Justin Fields. It's like, how do you mess up the first play of the game that you've had all week to be ready for? It's a scripted play, and it's like, how does everyone not know where they need to be and be on the field for that play? And then you get to the second drive. First play, the second drive. Justin Fields is in shotgun and tries to make an adjustment, and Sam Mustipher snaps it to him while he's trying to change the play and gets a false start on Justin Fields as a result, and it's a fumble and a killed play. And you're like, oh, geez, like, is this going to be sloppy, unprepared Bears team for this game? Like, what the heck? Why can't 2 drives in a row, the first 2 drives, they can't get it right on the first play? And you're like, oh no. And then of course the defense falls apart from there, and you're like, that the sky was falling for 2 quarters essentially. But you get towards the end of that first half, and the Bears get the ball into the red zone. It's 3rd and 8 at the 9-yard line, and they hand it off to David Montgomery. And 3rd and 8 at the 9, and you go to the running play. He gets into the end zone. It's a touchdown. It looks great. David Montgomery had a spectacular run on that play. And it worked, but it still felt like a little bit conservative there, because typically you're thinking 3rd and 8 at the 9. He might pick up even 5 or 6, but you're going to be left short on 4th and 2. And last week against the Giants, the Bears had one of those where they ran it on, was it 3rd and 3 in the red zone, and then kicked the field goal on 4th and 2. You thought, oh, if they ran on 3rd and 3, then they're playing it for 4-down territory there. And so I was nervous that when they handed off to Montgomery, they're like, oh, like, are you just going to settle for a field goal here? Ends up getting a touchdown, kind of bails them out a little bit of that decision. But I think the pivotal swing in this game was like, yes, everyone talks about the one-handed catch from Darnell Mooney, which was incredible, phenomenal catch. Great for him to be able to sort of reestablish himself in a league-wide highlight of like, oh yeah, Darnell Mooney is really good, and that's valuable for the Bears. But I think the bigger swing here was like, and so Bears scored a touchdown on David Montgomery's touchdown there to make it 21-10 instead of, well, at the time it was 21-3. It could have been 21-6 if the Bears had settled for a field goal. Vikings turn around, miss the field goal right before halftime. Bears come out of halftime, getting the ball back, drive down, score a touchdown, try and go for 2, which was the first like aggressive, smart, analytic-based move from Matt Eberflus, that you go for 2 there, because if you make the 2-point conversion, it's only a 3-point game and a field goal would tie it, and an extra point would have made it a 4-point game, which is essentially the same as being a 5-point game. You needed a touchdown either way. So smart decision to go for it, even though they weren't able to convert. And, you know, you can complain about the play call there, the wide receiver tunnel screen to Dante Pettis. 2 things on that real quick. One, that is a play that I first saw the Patriots run against the Bears in 2018 for a touchdown, and it worked really, really well. We've seen the Chiefs run it very successfully. It's kind of been adapted around, like the Bears ran it under Matt Nagy once or twice as well. It's one of these like popular, trendy plays. And usually it's like if your team is good, it looks good when you run it, and if your team is not good, then it doesn't look good. And it's more about the team than the play call itself. Second, I thought Dante Pettis was contacted before the ball got there. I think the defensive back was pulling his shoulder as he caught the ball and probably should have been flagged. It's beside the point, but I don't think it's worth spending too much time complaining about the 2-point conversion call. That's not why the Bears lost the game. But then they go to the surprise onside kick immediately after that. I think Eberflus is feeling this, right? He's like, okay, we got a touchdown before the half. They missed the field goal. They're dejected. We score right out of halftime. We're riding this. We're aggressive. The Vikings are on their toes all of a sudden. Let's keep pushing this a little bit. Let's go for 2. Let's try the onside kick. And even though they didn't get the 2-point conversion and they didn't get the surprise onside kick, I think they were both really smart, good decisions that put your football team in a better chance to win. Despite the results not helping you, the process did. And the Bears followed that up, that even after the failed onside kick, they blocked the Vikings' field goal attempt. And so you're still sort of shutting the Vikings down and holding them back, and your offense and your team is still the one in control of moving. You know, the Bears drive down, they get a 4th and 4, and they go for it because they're just outside of field goal range, but they realize that it's too close to punt. So like, good for Eberflus again, sort of feeling the game situation, feeling that you've been in control this half, and go for it. And they convert the 4th and 4. He was rewarded for that aggressive decision. The drive ended with a field goal. Fields had some pressure in the red zone on the 3rd down. I think that was the one where it got batted in his face. But like, okay, still, I liked the aggression to get points there as opposed to taking a punt that just would have been absolutely pathetic. And then you sort of keep riding that forward momentum with the Kindle Vildor interception, and you get the ball right back. And then you get the next drive is when Fields had his 52-yard touchdown run that ended up being called back. But like, right, being aggressive, pushing, keeping your foot on the pedal and really kind of going for it and hitting the Vikings while they're down kept paying off with those types of positive plays for the Bears. And to me, that felt like progress from this coaching staff, and hopefully they see that as them being rewarded for not being as conservative as they had been in recent games. I'm a little bit concerned that I give them credit for recognizing the flow of this game and how the flow of this game certainly called for the types of aggressive decision-making that they made. I wonder if the Bears hadn't been down 11 at halftime, you know, if they hadn't been a multi-score deficit, if they would have been as aggressive. Like, was that a result of like, hey, we're losing by a lot and we just got to get points going? You know, if the Bears are down 3, I don't think they attempt that onside kick. I don't know if they go for 2. The 2 is more about just the math of the score, but you know, I don't know if they go for it on that 4th and 4, right? I don't know if they're as aggressive in those situations if it's not a wider deficit on the scoreboard. And the math would tell you that if you're losing at all, do those things. Like, obviously, if you're winning, you're not going to attempt the onside kick, right? I'm like, sure. I mean, some of this is legitimately game situation stuff, but like, not settling for those field goals and not punting in some of those situations, like, those are always good decisions when you're losing, no matter how much you're losing by. But especially when your defense is not playing well and your offense is having the best stretch that it's had all season, those were smart decisions, and I'm glad they took advantage of it. And I'm hoping they continue that moving forward and show you that as a coaching staff, they're not too set in their ways of certain conservative decision making, and that they can do the process that's best for the team. Even if you miss the 2-pointer or you miss the onside kick, it was still the right decision to go for it. And in the long run, making those right decisions will put your team in a better position to be successful than being conservative in those moments, even if they didn't specifically work in the 2 examples that we mentioned there in this game. We'll see what happens on Thursday against a less talented Washington Commanders team. We'll see if the Bears can ride that second half momentum, even after a loss of this, take the positives from this game and apply them on Thursday. You can be sure we'll have you ready for that game this week. It's good. It's kind of a tight turnaround here. We'll do the All-22 film review tomorrow. Before you know it, we'll have our crossover Thursday podcast and the game's on Thursday, and we'll break it down on Friday. I mean, it's a condensed week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to Locked On Bears, or if you're following along the YouTube channel, click that little bell to be notified every time we put out a new video. It's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today, and hopefully each and every day. If you're looking for your second listen, the Locked On Podcast Network is your team every day, and I'm sure you would enjoy listening to Locked On Packers today after the way they collapsed against the New York Giants yesterday. If you just want to hear sort of the concern, the panic, a little bit of the catharsis there of not everything going great in Green Bay, I'm sure you would enjoy today's Locked On Packers. Or if you want to get a head start on the Commanders, Locked On Commanders will break down everything that happened with Carson Wentz blowing it for them a bit in that game and some of their struggles. Get that early scouting report going as well. So check out some of the other Locked On podcasts. Then come on back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears and another opportunity to bear down.